future land use amendment. This got as far as the Development Review Committee, which convened on 6/7/2022, and then the project stalled. Mr. Costa, who is here today, assumed the project, direct lead of the project himself on or about 6/30/2023. He moved forward with a POD amendment to support the future land use amendment. And then finally, part of the process, he hosted a community meeting here in City Hall chambers exactly 1 week ago tonight, in which 50 people attended. Going over the amendment itself, the amendment is a city ordinance, which was required 2 readings for adoption. It would change the future land use classification on what's currently on the property. Currently, it holds an AR, or agricultural rural land use classification. This classification density would allow 1 dwelling unit for every 5 acres. The next lowest classification the city has is called the residential low density, which permits 4 dwelling units per 1 acre. There's currently no land use available to the city between these 2 designations. Currently, the property is just over 59 acres, and doing the math, would be allowed to have 8 lots on it. This residential low density would permit up to, based on its density solely alone, and no further agreements, would be 171 lots. Again, the community meeting was on June 12, 2024, as I mentioned. The concerns really of the could be boiled down, I think, into 3 areas. One is the flooding, concerns of flooding onto neighboring properties. One was school capacity with regards to Demand Elementary. Another major concern that the general public or the attendees had were the traffic impacts on Fort Florida Road and West High Banks Road. Reviewing this further against our comprehensive plan, we review the proposed amendment or any amendment of this nature for our against our long-range plan. We look at the goals, objectives, and policies that we establish in the plans, which have been established for many years. These policies address at a minimum things listed on the slide, which are management of natural resources, transportation, school capacity, potable and sewer capacity, drainage, solid waste, and recreational capacity. If we look at our management of natural resources, the plans indicate that there are 7.96 acres of wetlands on the subject property. Our policy is very clear on wetlands and their required use. Our policy states that wetland areas will be buffered from new development consistent with the regulation of the St. John Water Management District and Volusia County. We rely on the experts for this assessment. Also, just of note, this ordinance cannot be adopted at the second reading until it has been transmitted to the Water Management District pursuant to the Florida Statute 163. The Water Management District will have 30 days upon transmission of this ordinance to provide comments, and additionally, no development orders can be issued until they meet all the requirements of the district and the county. I'm looking at the future land use. We've evaluated the comprehensive plan, which looks at accessing the community and this compatibility with surrounding land uses. The majority of the nearby land uses have been developed at a density within or exceeding the RLD classification. The proposed ordinance would permit a zoning or a land use which is relatively consistent with the general area. If we look at the surrounding communities on the graphic, I've broken this down into a northeast, southwest orientation. North is River Bluff, which is an agricultural rural community north of High Banks Road. The permitted density right now is 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, but their approximate lot size is 2.5 acres for reference. To the east is St. John River Estates, number 1, which is a residential low density, permitting 4 dwelling units per acre, and the lot size is around 0.5 acres per lot. To the south is St. John's River Estates number 2, agricultural rural land use, 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres permitted, and the approximate lot size is again about 0.5 acres. We have 3 communities to the west. One is Traders Cove, which is a residential mobile home community classification. It's permitted to have 8 dwelling units per acre, and the lot size runs from about 0.18 to 0.36 size individual lot. To the west, again, we have Olive Bluff. We have Olive Bluff South, which has the agricultural rural land use classification, again, of 1 dwelling unit per 5. And the average lot size, approximate lot size we measured was between 3 to 5 acres. Olive Bluff North has the same lot size. However, it has a residential low-density land use, which permits 4 dwelling units per acre. One of the biggest concern was traffic. What I want to lay out is our transportation element of our comprehensive plan indicates our local roads, including high banks, will have a level of service minimum of level of service D. Well, what does ABCD mean other than a grade my teacher gave me? Well, I put it on the screen. Level of service D is where we can operate and where High Banks currently operates. It operates at a level of service D, which designates that the traffic nears an unstable flow. Intersections still function, but there are short queues that develop cars, and you may have to wait through 1 cycle of a light cycle. Level of service C, as you see above the D, is where I believe Fort Florida Road currently operates, which is a steady, high-volume traffic flow with some limitations to movement. What we don't want to trigger is down a level of service E, which are frequent stops, multiple cycles, and blocked intersections. During the Development Review Committee, we asked the applicant to do the study to ensure it did not trigger a level of service E and it maintained a minimum level of service D. So that was directed by our staff. So we got a traffic report back. We also had our traffic analysts go beyond the 91 units and say, what if this is developed at max capacity of 171 units? Still at that capacity, a level of service D would be maintained. Then we did another what-if scenario. We said, well, how much traffic could High Banks actually take? And High Banks still, with this project, could take another 400 peak hour trips before it triggered into a threshold of E, which would be untenable or unsuitable. And for reference, a peak hour trip is produced by a single family residence. The ratio is 0.99 peak hour trips per resident. Peak hour are the hours of the most traffic AM, or most traffic PM. Again, assessment taken out, analyzed. High Banks Road was analyzed based on, I believe, October 25th, 2023 data, which FDOT produced their data for it. And Fort Florida Road was taken from a 2022 survey showing High Banks Road at completion of Riverview Estates would operate still at a D, and Fort Florida Road would maintain its C category. Capital improvements, which are major things the city buys, constructs. At the preliminary plat and construction phase or the subdivision process, if the project gets that far, we'll do a further analysis on our CIP requirements at that time. Public use and facilities. Volusia County manages the student loads and have the student load ratios. And as they are I'm not only the certified expert, but the people who do the school concurrency, they do the evaluation of projects. Some people may think, well, one house is 4 kids, one house is 3 kids. I believe the ratio is about 0.4 kids per single family resident. How the school board determines that, they base that off of certified data from the most recent 10-year census and based on the number of units. That is their ratio. In any extent, they had no objection to this facility, and this facility would further need to go through school concurrency if it goes to the subdivision phase. water and sewer. Volusia County Utilities is our agent for potable water and sewer services. And they've indicated they have sufficient capacity to serve a development of this size on the property. Another concern, drainage. There will be very detailed drainage details at the subdivision phase, because that's when actual lots get placed or planned to be placed. Again, no development order can be granted without adequate infrastructure in place for the drainage. Just going over a bird's eye view of the property, you see they look teal, I guess, on the screen. Those are, according to the firm map, those are flood zone A. You see those on this property. You also see this on the properties to the east and also on the northeast. Drainage. They did previously. The applicant prior to this did provide some initial drainage data. The dark shaded areas show depressions, which are terrain going down on the property, and those issues, any type of wetland issues, would be managed during the subdivision phase. Solid waste. The adapted regulatory level service is 5 pounds per person per day. And again, this would be handled during the concurrency phase with our solid waste provider. And if they don't have the capacity, then they would not be able to have this development order. We are currently with this within our level of service, which we've adopted in our comprehensive plan, 4 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. It's not anticipated that this development or any development from this will have an adverse impact on this. So a review of these evaluation based on our comprehensive plan, which we're required to do. The applicant, again, proposes to amend the future land use from AR to RLD. So the proposed density is consistent and compatible with our comprehensive plan based on the analysis tools that we are required to look at. So it does meet the criteria. We don't recommend a thing as staff, but it does meet the criteria for consideration before the council for Ordinance 9-2024, which you have before you. Implementation, how this would work. If there's a positive vote from the council, this land use amendment, since it's greater than 50 acres, would have to go to the Tallahassee, to the state agencies for review. Again, the state agencies for review have 30 days to provide their comments. This is not an inclusive list on the slide, but agencies reviewing and providing comments back would be the Department of Commerce, the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council, the Water Management District, of course, the Environmental Protection Department, the Department of State, DOT, and also our local Volusia County Growth Management Commission. If any agency provides comments indicating the ordinance would have an adverse effect, then the city would also provide measures which would need to be taken to eliminate any adverse effect. Unresolved comments could be challenged by the state and local planning agency, and after the end of the state period ends, the city must have a second reading within 180 days of receipt of those comments from the state. Thank you.
And now the applicant will provide their input. State your name and affiliation for the record.
Good evening. For the record, McGregor Love at 215 North Eola Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. First, I'd like to thank staff. You know this, but you're very well served by them. There are plenty of cities where I go through a long presentation to supplement what staff could have said. That is not the case in the city of DeBary, and that's really due to Mr. Bapp and your staff, and we appreciate working with them through this process. So instead, I'm able to focus on kind of the broader, more policy-based issues here, which is appropriate because this is a legislative action. We're asking you to amend your future land use map. And in your comprehensive plan, this is really exactly the type of development that this particular property was always intended for at this time. It's interesting, the agricultural rural designation provides. Areas within this classification are expected to remain largely open and undeveloped in or agricultural uses during the early part of the planning period, although the area will develop in conventional urban and suburban uses and densities once adequate infrastructure is provided. You also know that your comprehensive plan is arranged, the planning horizon is from 2010 to 2030, so we are on the back half of that planning horizon, and as Mr. Bapp covered here, there is adequate infrastructure to support this development, and it's not being developed at the full capacity of what this designation would allow. It's just over half the density that would be allowed here. It's a responsible development. Now, like I said, I'm not going to go through this whole presentation, but I will pull this up just for your reference as I'm speaking. There is a minimum open space requirement for this designation of 20%. The development is proposing 52% open space. That's comprised of 31.26 acres of open space. The gross density comes out at 1.53 units an acre, and the net density is 2.13 units per acre. So this is a development that is responsible and thoughtful. It's being developed and asked for. The comprehensive plan amendment is asked for when your comprehensive plan said that it should be developed for this type of use. And lastly, I'll say that I know there are a lot of folks here, and I know they were here a week ago. I'll tell you what I told them. I truly do respect their input and their concerns. We may never see eye to eye on this point, but I really feel that this is a development that will enhance the city and will enhance the area. And I appreciate the time to make the request. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will have public participation, and this is a legislative hearings, but after the public participation and prior to questions and comments from the council, I will give the applicant a brief period of time to answer points that may be brought up by you, the public, during your time. So I would invite you to the mic. You say your name, your address, and then you have your comments. You will have 5 minutes. I encourage you, if your points can be made in less than that, that would be helpful. But I don't want to miss any of your input. And if there is someone here representing a group and that designated spokesman supplants comments by any individual member of the group other than the spokesman, they may have 7 minutes. So I would invite Amber Schmidt to the podium.
Thank you so much. I did not plan on being the first speaker, so ultimately, I just feel like it's important.
Name and address for the record. Thank
Amber
you.
Schmidt, 32 Keeble Avenue, DeBerry, Florida. I think it's important as a resident to express the concerns that we see that we're already dealing with as a result of the development and the concerns we see that could potentially impact our community. As a resident in St. John's Estates, water is currently an issue, Keeble Avenue specifically. We continue to not be able to keep our road intact. It costs the homeowners extensive money, extensive time, extensive additional plans for drainage, because when the community was originally developed, whatever fell through the cracks in that planning process. So the water is constantly an issue. We see other communities in Volusia County that are experiencing issues that went through the proper process, that had the proper approvals, and that now are flooding into land as a result of the development continuing, even though they had the studies that supported that they were going to be just fine. I can't help but express my concern for the wildlife. In the last year, I've seen no less than 5 different bears pass through the properties. Not only do I reside at 32 Keble, but we possess the 3 surrounding lots of that property that my grandparents bought in the early 2000s. So those no less than 4 different bears, possibly 5 to 7 different bears. I can't help but think of last year's incident on this side of 1792, and I can't help but be concerned that with the number of increasing residents and the number of decreasing acres for these bears to forage, for these bears to traffic, I can't help but be concerned for the fact that we're going to see an increase of wildlife meeting residents. That doesn't count the deer, that doesn't count the sandhill cranes, the eagles, et cetera. I can't help but express traffic. I don't understand why D is an acceptable level. I don't understand why residents that moved here should have to settle for D as an acceptable level for trying to get to work, for trying to take their kids to school. It just doesn't make sense to me. And so I can't help but express concern for traffic issues, road maintenance, upkeep, et cetera. And I just feel it really important to reference past meetings. Karen, I believe it was you yourself who said that you wanted to understand whether the residents, whether it was important for them to maintain green space. And I think their response to this gentleman's statements just a moment ago about this being an improvement to the city, I think they're expressing, and I certainly am expressing, that green space is important and that we are saddened by the loss of green space. And while we can't stop development, adding this is not a right. It's not a right when the community is speaking and saying, hey, this has adverse effects, this is hurting us as existing residents that have been here for some time. That's not a right that is owed. They purchased that property with that usage, and we see impacts. So I just feel it really important to leave on the record that green space is important to myself and I know to the surrounding community members. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Christine Rosenheim, I'm hoping I'm saying that correct?
Hi, my name is Christine Rosenheim. I'm future resident of 12 Keble. We are in the process right now to the design and planning of our house. And one of my biggest concerns when I see over here, I think when they create a master plan, they do not consider at all the people in Keble. Like the previous person who spoke, they say Keble already suffer a lot with the water. And in the way they are putting all the houses, let me put my glasses on, I cannot see without. From lot 13 to lot 24, they are basically struggling in Keble even more. There is one wetland here in the rear, exactly the wetland that's affecting my property itself, that is going to be affected 0.25 acre. Right now, my land used to be 2 years ago, 1/4 of the lot as a wetland. The last study we did, like 3 months ago, is already 3/4, so the water is rising a lot in that area. So if they even cover more of this wetland, where this water goes, go to Keble. There is no other way, because even in the plans, I do not see any swallow or connection or anything to the stormwater pond they are creating. There is no connection. They are basically going to block that area, and all the water that's already existing there is going to raise even more. So not only my house will be underwater, but my neighbor's house will be underwater. And so I think if they're planning to develop and there is no other way around, I wish there is, they need to reconsider the design to do not affect the way they are planning affect the houses in Keble right now. All this like corner over there, over here, this will be just a disaster for Keble. And another concern I had is the traffic. Yes, not only I think is not good. The problem is there is no shoulder in several parts of High Banks or several parts of Florida. Right now is already not a safe road to be if there is an accident, because there is no way around. There is no shoulder, there is no place where you can go. And if we still have more traffic, more everything, I think will be even worse. That is basically my concern. My worst nightmare is happening here right now because I know my house and my neighbor's house will be underwater. And I believe if they really want to keep it, they need to reconsider the redesign of the site, of the plot plan. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda Rose.
Hi, good evening, Brenda Rose, 383 Wall Rock Street. Also, I'm the president of St. John's River Estates HOA. Thanks for your comments already, for the Keeble people, as I call them. I'll try to make mine real short. I've already provided information to the council members regarding all the news articles that have been going on recently about the flooding in the local neighborhoods. I also provided to the council members a document that sort of indicates where I believe that the comp plan, the comprehensive plan, goals and objectives are not quite reflected in this proposal. Then I think that mitigation or identifying a wetland is not totally consistent with Section 4101 or whatever, where they were saying that the city has a what's the term that they used? A program of activities to discuss wetlands, to look at whether or not things can be moved away from the wetlands, to prevent impact on the wetlands, to not impact the floodplain. As you had seen before, the floodplain is very significant for us. Wetlands are very significant for us. And the wetland that they plan to remove is shared with our community along conservation areas. And the wetland in the center of this, where they plan to keep and put 2 stormwater ponds on both sides of it, certainly will impact what the wetland has been doing so far, and will push that water. The Keeble's elevation is the same elevation as the wetland on that property. So you know where the water's going to go. Again, Nurek Avenue is an avenue that has never been developed, which is to the west of Keeble, is part of our St. John's River Estates, and it has 20 half-acre lots that have never been developed because you can't, because they're wet, all the time wet. So my next question was to look at sort of like the RPUD issue, because in that it says if you agree that the city council is basically saying that we're meeting the requirements for rezoning, and that you've done that based on the comp plan, policy 5.505, and are consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and land development code. So basically, this development will have a 20-foot perimeter or buffer or whatever, you want to call it, along Nurek on the east boundary. But in the perimeter, they are also saying that you can have the wetland buffer. You can also have the wetland buffer being in people's private yards, and that somehow that'll get turned over to easement for the HOA to manage. So for those houses that bound up against the east boundary, they're going to have wetland buffers in their yard, as provided it's not more than 25% of their rear yard, that somehow will be turned over to easement that the HOA is going to monitor. Well, I know, anybody who knows me knows what I think about HOAs monitoring anything that they're incompetent to monitor, like wetlands. The other issue is that it allows for the wetland buffers and landscape buffers can be located within the, but the wetland buffers, perimeter buffers can remain in natural condition, except for where they think it's undesirable. At that point in time, they can excavate to create ponds and embankments to create a berm, which will be permitted within the buffer. Well, the perimeter buffer, again, is all wet, the east buffer, all wet, all the way down. I don't care where you see it. It's got floodplain, conservation, wetland, all the way down. So in the perimeter, in the development plan, it says that they're going to be able to go in here and excavate the thing, which I think is just unreasonable. For us, one second on the open space. Open space is very important. In this plan, open space includes stormwater ponds. Open space includes tree preservation, which is also equal to the wetlands. That's nowhere in your comprehensive plan. You don't have stormwater ponds being open space. It's supposed to be like parks and benches and those kinds of things.
She should, she's speaking for the community. I need you to wrap up your comments.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
For us, I think the east boundary should be able to get the 50-foot buffer that's allowed for in the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua Hughes.
Good afternoon. Name's Joshua Hughes. We live on 80 Craycroft Avenue in St. Johns River Estates. As a professional engineer myself, I can only offer my opinion on this subject, but it's my opinion that this proposed development poses a risk to the neighboring developments, specifically St. Johns River Estates. Over my few years of employment, I've had to review flooding issues at other developments based on new developments coming about. Some of those would be like University High School. They've had issues with developments around them that I've had to review. This development to me is no different than the other ones I've had to review, where we share wetlands and floodplains with this proposed development. And houses along Keeble currently experience frequent flooding, so much so that the eastern adjacent lots of the proposed development were never constructed, as mentioned by Brenda. Since the proposed development is in the preliminary design phase, it's likely that the drainage analysis and modeling hasn't been thoroughly completed at this time. Therefore, there's nothing for the residents and city to really review at this time. My concern arises with the development of a higher dwelling unit density than the neighboring developments, resulting in higher stormwater runoff potential. Even if correctly designed, there's uncertainty that the proposed stormwater management systems will be maintained to safeguard these adjacent properties. That's not to mention, minor errors in geotechnical analysis and actual stormwater design. As mentioned, these flood zones and wetlands are within the proposed development or shared with St. John's Woods and are vital at reducing the possible flooding potential along Keeble. The flood zones can be compensated and the wetlands can be mitigated, but there will still be disruption to the natural flow path of surface water runoff within these areas and a reduction in natural ponding ability of the existing wetlands and floodplains. The rezoning of the proposed development to an RPUD is excessive for this area and does not meet the majority of the surrounding zoning classifications. The proposed development is also not consistent with the goals and visions of the city to maintain a character of a small rural community, especially within this region of the city. The current zoning and future land use of the proposed property is A-2, which has the purpose and intent of serving and protecting rural areas that the city that have some agricultural value, but which are also suitable for rural estate living. Even a rezoning classification of A3 would better serve the area by providing a transition between the different land uses within this area. The possibility of leaving the existing floodplains and wetlands undisturbed is is a possibility if we, keep it as a agricultural A2 or A3. Other real concerns would be the strain imposed on the school system, utility facilities, roadways, drainage infrastructure, not to mention the endangered species and species of concern, many of which were listed previously: sandhill cranes, the Florida black bear, Florida scrub jays, grasshopper sparrows, blue herons, red cockaded woodpecker, gopher tortoises, you name it. In summary, maintaining the agricultural rural estate living by either keeping the current zoning classification of A2 or even rezoning to A3 would provide a better transition between different residential developments. This will also provide the opportunity to leave the existing floodplains and wetlands undisturbed, thereby reducing, if not limiting, adjacent landowner concerns of increased runoff and flooding potential. This will also help serve the purpose and intent of preserving and protecting rural areas of the city that, once developed, will never be returned to its rural nature. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Jason Starkey, please.
Hi, Jason Starkey, 425 Fox Run. I want to thank you for hearing the residents' concerns tonight and really appreciate that. And I can see in your faces and your eyes that you are really taking it all in. So thank you for that. A lot of other people have mentioned succinctly some major issues with this proposal, but I just wanted to bring up a few other things. I grew up in DeBary. I used to live by St. Anne's Church, and I'd ride my bike all over DeBary back when Fort Florida was a dirt road. Because of the traffic on High Banks now, I can't let my kids venture out there, especially because the sidewalk is so close to High Banks Road, and I'm just really concerned that something could happen. And I think to that point, the traffic has kind of hit a fever pitch. Even them closing the end of Fort Florida and rerouting people down Barwick has made an impact. And I go that way in the mornings and cars start to stack up. I can't imagine what's going to happen when we have more traffic coming down High Banks and going out Fort Florida in that direction. The extension to the turning lane on High Banks was a help, but I don't think it was enough, and I think additional homes is going to be an issue. And I think as far as the drainage goes, I also used to live in St. John's Wood on Dial Ave, and that neighborhood's got a lot of experience with drainage issues, and I think that it's just going to push a lot more water in the neighboring areas. And my last thought about this is that I don't think that the proposal is consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. You have River Bluff, you've got to the east St. John's Woods, and then you've got the riverfront lots that are a couple acres. These are significantly smaller, and I just think that it would be really great if it was something like River Bluff or maybe even an acre to 2 acre lots, but that's not what this is really going to be when you look at the density and how close the homes are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Danny Allen, are you speaking for yourself or a group? A group, okay, 7 minutes.
Is there any way they can put the map up, or the map that had the engineering from your DRC?
A little more specific.
The map that, with all the engineering of the lot layouts with the numbers on them that they presented to DRC?
Page 41, David, in the packet.
I don't see it. You can't see the very,
Is this the one that you were referring to?
Yeah, but this one has all the color in it. You can't see the way, what they had at DRC. All right, I'll just go with
Okay,
that. It's
can you
fine.
use this one and make the best of it?
Okay, thank you. Danny Allen, representing DRE. DRE stands for DeBerry Residents Against Increased Density, 450 South Shell Road. I want to talk about 4 major things today: flooding, schools, traffic, and consistency, or compatible, whatever words they want to use. The flooding, which everyone sees are stopping the natural flow of the water. And if this was a regular lot that someone was trying to develop in the middle of this, they call infield lots, they wouldn't allow it to happen because they're raising it up and there's nowhere for the water. The St. John's Woods has a problem. What about the people on Conomac Road? They have a dike between them, and they're going to raise the property, I'm sure, 2 to 3 feet so their ponds will work. They have to. So you got a problem with, everybody knows flooding. The school, I think the school board's numbers are off on 26 students, but they haven't turned anybody down. It's been over capacity when they built the school the first day it opened. And you were pushing to get them to open another school. Hopefully they do. But all they'll do is some of the kids that are living right beside the school, they'll get transported to Orange City. So why make the problem worse? The traffic, we know it's rated D on High Banks. I have friends that live on 50 West High Banks on a Saturday. You have to turn around in your yard if you want to get out because you can't back out. And it's getting worse. The biggest problem that I want to have the biggest disagreement about is consistency and compatible. Whatever word they want to use, they put out the matrix where there's 2.5 acres at River Bluff. I mean, 1 home per 2.5 acres. On Fort Florida Road, you have 3.5 to 5 acres. St. John's Woods, those are 5-acre lots. They're trying to make it that it's consistent with their. And I went into Traders Cove the other day, and I believe that 50% of their lots are larger than the lots they have in this development. Look at lots 67, 69, 70, 71, and 72, and 73. Their plat also has open space being used where that top right pond is. And then if you look at the other one that they send DRC, go down all Fort Florida Road, that's all their natural tree save area. There's no trees there. The property that goes beside the church, there's no trees there, so what do they let them get credit for that? And I don't know, I guess they let them get open space credit for wet ponds now. But where I'm going to disagree on above the chart, it had all the future land use, where it says it's going to be, the zoning is going to be relatively consistent with the area around there. I don't believe that. That's not true. And consistent, I mean, it's different. It's just like if I say we're going to be temporary. What's temporary's definition to everybody? But the closest thing to them is do not change the comp plan and leave it. They could change the zoning in the comp plan they already have and change it to A3, have 1 home an acre. And I imagine everybody would probably agree with that. But they want to just say, oh, we can put 8 homes an acre. Well, I just ask you to vote no on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that is the end of public participation on item number 4. So I would invite the counsel for the applicant to have a brief time to address any of the concerns that he would like to address that were raised by residents.
Good evening again, McGregor Love. I'll just briefly address some of the concerns that were raised. There was, well, first I'll say generally speaking that the benefit to the PUD plan here is that what you see today is a binding concept plan. I know that folks behind me have heard this. I talked about it at the community meeting. The benefit of this plan is that we are not going to build that 171 units that is possible with this comp plan designation. We're asking for 91 units. And part of the process from here, which Mr. Bapp went through, is going to be the subdivision planning, where a lot of the questions and concerns you hear tonight ultimately must be addressed. And if, and these questions have been looked into. The traffic issue is something we worked with the city on. We have had an engineer look at the retention, the stormwater retention issue. But if we go through the subdivision planning process, and that's when those really detailed plans do come into play, what will happen, and we discover, or the city is of the opinion that one of the issues you've heard tonight does require a redesign of this project, well, the subdivision plan will have to be revised to be different than the plan you're seeing tonight. And then together with the subdivision plan, we'll be back here to ask for a revision of the PUD plan if that is approved. So that's all to say that some of these concerns, and I think it was Mr. Hughes that mentioned it, that they're not fully vetted yet, and that's by design. That is part of the process, and your staff report does provide that this will have to be looked into and addressed and complied with. The green space concern, again, and some of the open space is recreational open space. Some of the open space is pond area. Open space sort of has several purposes to it. One of it is just not to be impervious area, and that's where the calculation comes. Again, it's 52%, and to Ms. Schmidt's concern about the loss of green space, the code says that we need, or not code, your comprehensive plan says that you have to have at least 20% open space, and again, we're providing 52%. The question of consistency versus compatibility, those terms are sort of used interchangeably, but they are distinct terms. The consistency piece is the request consistent with the comprehensive plan's goals, objectives, and policies. And the policy that I point to is the policy that, again, I mentioned it, is that at this point in the planning period, this, rural designated land is meant to be developed when that public infrastructure is available as it is now. That's what makes this request consistent with your comprehensive plan. What makes it compatible, and compatibility does not mean that every use has to be identical. It means that they have to coexist with one another, and the lot sizes are smaller than some of the lot sizes in the surrounding area. But when you look at the overall gross and net density, what we're asking for is consistent and allows us to maintain that 52% open space in a quarter-acre lot, which is smaller than some of the surrounding lots. But it is a much lower density than this designation we're asking for would allow at maximum density. So I'm here to answer questions. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, now we will have council questions and comments, and they may be addressed to staff, they may be addressed to the city attorney, they may be addressed to the applicant, they may reiterate questions that they heard from the audience and ask for clarification from the appropriate party.
We missed a speaker from our area.
I have someone for item 5. We're on item 4. And so if we get to item 5, that person will be able to speak, as well as those who asked to speak on both. Councilmember Sell.
Mostly I have comments. Bear with me. I'm going to go all over the place and come back home, and we'll see where it goes. I've gone to Deltona meetings before when they've held all the cards, and they had a developer come to them and want to do, 10 homes per acre. And I went up there and I told them, I said, you have a unicorn in front of you. You hold all the cards. You can say no. You can negotiate. You can take that number and work it down. You have so many options. They just voted yes. The reason I do that is because it taxes our water supply in the state of Florida because of their voting record. They just can't say no to development. Recently, they have. This past week, they finally said no. DeBerry, I know you guys read the papers, you see things, you see the traffic, you think that we just approve everything that comes in front of us. The majority of the time, that's already been decided. We don't have a leg to stand on. We're just going to get lawyer, they're going to lawyer up, they're going to sue us, they're going to win, they're going to cost us money for tax dollars to pay lawyers, and we have really no say in it at all. Tonight, we hold all the cards. Currently, the developer can put one home per 5 acres. And there's nothing he can do about it tonight. He knows that. That's all he's got, one home per 5 acres. So yes, we have the aces. We're holding all the cards. The winning hand. What I don't like is that it's either one home for 5 acres, which is a total of about 8 homes, or up to 171. I know he doesn't want to do 171. I wish there was some middle ground tonight. I really do. I can tell by you guys when Danny Allen said one home per acre and you guys all clapped. Well, now he has your temperature. Now he knows what you're willing to budge on and where your line in the sand is. Whether he can squeeze $1 out of that or not, I don't know. But he can either stick with 8 homes total or somehow find a compromise. Somehow find that compromise. Personally, if he wants my temperature, I'm willing to compromise. I'm willing to compromise because I just heard you all say you're willing to compromise.
Okay, excuse me. Let me get some decorum rules set here. This is not a back and forth between the audience. We have given respect to the other speakers. We give respect to the members of the council. We invited the public to speak. There was a time to speak. But this is not going to be a back and forth during the meeting. I hope you understand. So continue, Councilmember Sell.
To make this, tie it all up in a bow, there's no way I can vote for this tonight. No way. But in the future, I welcome you to come back and do some kind of compromise. And let's get this done. I know 8 homes on 60 acres is kind of ridiculous, but I think there's some room to wiggle there if you do some homework and you sharpen your pencil. I think you can get it done. I think you can come back with some kind of compromise. You know, during COVID, I sat down at one of those card tables over there because we were all spread out. And I told a resident, I said, you know, in about 20 years, you're going to have to take your kids to the Sanford Zoo to see a sandhill crane. And he almost attacked me. But he didn't understand where I was going with this. You want to see a bear, you want to see a sandhill crane, you might have to go to the zoo to see it in 20 years. You know, crazy as it sounds, but Florida's very popular. They're building everywhere. And this is one time in a million times that where we actually hold the cards and we can make some demands and we can come to a compromise. And I hope we do, I really do. That's all I got to say.
Councilmember Papalardo.
I most just have comments, and I'll try to keep it brief. I did some numbers. So I attended the community meeting last week. I appreciate everyone having shown up. It was good to see the back and forth and that the effort that was put in on both sides. I am sympathetic. I think this is a quality proposal, and I appreciate the effort that got it down to 91 units. Preservation of open spaces, even if we don't agree on the term open space, and the thoughtful placement of ingress and egress. But that doesn't mean that the project is without flaws. However, I also don't believe it's appropriate to hold different cities' projects against development here because this is DeBerry, it's not what the land messed up and everything like that. So I'm not compelled to believe that the current future land use map is inconsistent in this vicinity. Primarily the lot dimensions, the weighted average is about 9,500 square feet, less than a quarter acre as the attorney mentioned. And looking at the greater map, I don't think that's creating any improvement to the future land use map. I think it may create greater inconsistency than what is argued to exist right now. Again, I don't think it's inconsistent as it stands. School capacity, that laughable number is not anyone's fault here. As a community, we need to press the school board to reevaluate their methodology for school attendance for new developments. There's been a frequent complaint that we have made to them, that I have spoke to school board members about, and the system refused to provide a reasonable solution. The numbers are antiquated. I don't know where they're coming up with it. Furthermore, there are 20 homes located on 4.36 acres of wetlands. I don't think that it's appropriate to open sensitive lands to mitigation or deletion when changing the future land use map would open it up to that, to harm that geography. Wetlands are becoming increasingly rare. That is my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Stevenson?
Thank you. I had also attended the community meeting and last week, and I got to hear a lot of the residents, and I also, Mr. Costa, I heard your argument as well, and I really had to think hard about your statement that you had brought up about the cost of infrastructure and why one house for every 5 acres is pretty much undoable for you, business-wise. And so I had brought my question then to the city manager and said, is there somewhere in the middle, like Councilmember Sell had mentioned? Is there a compromise, like the residents have been asking for 1 unit per acre? And actually there is. The current zoning, which says only 1 unit per 5 acres, also allows you to transition, and it's in our packet here, it says where you could, it would permit transitional agricultural A3 zoning, which would be a minimum 1 acre in the area, which would allow 43 residential lots, depending on the private public rights of way. And that, along with the unique topography of this parcel and the infrastructure, with the stormwater and those wetlands and the way this parcel, everybody keeps pointing out, why would we build a higher density in a sensitive area that is going to impact a neighboring development that's already been there, when you have land that's pretty much open and cleared already, closer to the road? So I'm basing my decision tonight on those 2 factors. I don't feel that this higher density is consistent or compatible with the neighboring areas, and I don't feel that the infrastructure can handle that higher density. Even though you have the open green space, I think that I'm happy with the possibility of you being able to come back with a different plan that doesn't impact the wetlands and where the unit lots are 1 acre in size. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Butland.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with my co-counsel people. I'm not going to deliberate and go over it again. Thank you, Patricia, for the clarification of that, because that was one of my main things. We talk about schools, and the city has no control over the schools. We just don't. We can, listen to them. They build the buildings. We do that. We have no control over what that number is, how they calculate it. So that's not something I can deal with. I can deal with the traffic study, which is what bothers me. I'm in back and forth on High Banks in Fort Florida. I want it, truthfully, about 6 to 8 times a day. My concern is you're already at a D, and we haven't even gotten the Sunrail going to DeLand yet. So that's 20 trips a day, one way, going back. So it's 40 trips that are going to stop us at High Banks, one way or the other, to get down to this area. So I'm a little concerned with the traffic study, already at a D, making it an F after the land gets into place. So that has not been considered at all in the future of what's going on in this area. I do live down that way, and I have a problem with the traffic already. We see it already at Barwick with the detour that we have to do, and that backs up 14 cars back across the train tracks. It is a problem. So I'm hoping that we can move on that. As far as the wildlife goes, all of our properties, because we're all down in that way, you wouldn't be here if you weren't down in that area, somehow or another had wildlife at some point. Our houses were built in these areas that have wildlife, and they have moved on to other places. Once in a while I get deer in my backyard. Sometimes I get 1 turkey, sometimes I get 17. It depends with the flow of where they're going. That's not something we can stop either. The animals will go. There's plenty of still open space somewhere for them to go to. Sometimes they have to get...
Excuse me, I need you to keep your comments
Sometimes
low so
they have to get
speakers
moved
respect
because
it.
if they're endangered or whatever, they do get moved. And that's all environmental. That will all be taken care of at the time of the development. I am concerned with all those things. but I cannot go forward with what we have in front of us to say that this is all okay regardless of what the future holds for us down there. So that's where I stand with everything. So thank you, Council, for your comments.
Okay, I would like to start my comments with several things that I like about the plan. I like Florida Rustic. I like the tree selection. I like the plantings in the understory, but they can be done on a less dense build-out. I appreciate that you care about those things, Mr. Costa. I care about them too. But I also care passionately about our water situation, our water resources. We have floodplains. We have wetlands. We aren't making new wetlands in this city. And I am getting, my feelings are stronger and stronger about impinging on any that we have that are left. I do sympathize with those who are in the development east of this proposed development. They have real concerns. They really have water to manage on their own, which they've discovered is legally their responsibility. No matter who the developer was way back when and the county let them do it, I don't know. Nurek Road, which was mentioned in one of the written sets of comments that was mailed to us, and I'm sure has been available to you, or Nurek Avenue, I forget the last part of the name. I noticed that 2 of those lots were sold in 2024. Do you think anyone bought those lots with no plans for them? They too would like to develop their lots. I'm betting you, I don't know why somebody out of the city would have bought undeveloped, on an undeveloped road, vacant land in DeBary if they didn't have some plan for it. I don't think it's like some of my neighbors that buy the adjacent parcels to make sure nobody builds there. I think there are at least 2 on this very short unplatted road that in 2024 acquired property with the idea that they would build. I have a lot of concerns about the separation of the proposed layout between this development and that development. 20 feet is the distance from you to me. That's not much. Not much when we have water issues. If you are a couple of feet higher, and I know you're flowing all your water down towards your ponds, but we share the wetland, and we share the floodplain. What does that do to me? I don't see a massive infrastructure project that has been proposed by the development that would keep the water that used to be able to flow there, when historically they can flow your way too, and protect them from repercussions from that. I also have a different view of compatibility, and I think over the years you and I in discussions may have had some of these discussions before. The way I see this is we as a council have the ability to make this make sense. We have half acres on Lake Conomac. We have half acres to the east. We have larger properties to the north, larger properties to the south, and then we have the manufactured home community. We can go from the half acre to the acre to the 3 to 5, 2.5, and the manufactured. This is something that provides, in my way of thinking, a logical way of developing when I think about my responsibilities in seeing DeBary's final developments make sense with what is already there. I do understand, as your council has pointed out, that this is a binding concept plan. We also had a binding concept plan on what is now Rivington. It was an agrihood. And once the rights were there, things changed. And the plan changed. And now we have a neighborhood where many people love living. To those, including my husband, who say I could never live there, I say it's not for you. It is for these other residents that are joining us who like that community, and they have some sound reasons for liking that community. We have denser development around Sunrail. That's appropriate. I believe that we have a variation in our neighborhoods that it reflects the will of the people in this future land use map. We do still value the fact that we have some zoned agricultural land. Go back in Orlandia Heights. They take pride in their AR zoning. River Bluff, they take pride in that. I think that there is a sentiment in this community that not everything has to look like the things that are denser by Sunrail. I defend what's denser by Sunrail. That too is good planning. Public transportation, reduce dependence on cars, ability to commute on Sunrail, different kinds of assets for all of us to enjoy. You may or may not agree with it. It may not have been your choice if you had your druthers. We are constrained legally in many ways, as Councilmember Sell has said, but that makes sense too, whether you think you would like to live there. It's probably not for you. It isn't for many people I know, but it is for some who have joined our community and some who have had children grow up, become professionals, and want to still live here, but they need housing that doesn't have a septic and a well to worry about and all of that, that some of our older neighborhoods in the entrance level of housing have. I could support A3, 1 per acre, respecting all of the wetlands, planning for the impact on floodplains. I'm concerned about the impervious surface that is going on this sensitive land in total. I don't like the RV and boat parking because I see something about a roof. I don't want more stuff, rain coming off the edges. We need to preserve the ability of the land that we have to handle the water we receive. And in recent years, we've received more water, even in non-hurricane seasons. So over time, I have become more and more concerned about our wetlands. And this property has significant wetlands. There are many other things that I could say. I understand about your planning window, or 2024, it goes to 2030. It says it can be developed, may well be developed. We're not saying it can't be developed at all. But it's not an obligation to develop it. Certainly not an obligation to develop it in a denser fashion than most of the community, I sense, is willing to support. I agree that many of the other concerns, the fears, will be handled later in the process. But once it's entitled, then you're sort of, you've entrusted with us, saying, go ahead, get this binding concept plan that entitles this land a certain way. And we've said to all these people, trust us, when we get to it, we'll do it. Don't worry, some authority somewhere will say no if it's wrong. And we have illustrations around us. And I'm not going to say this city did that, this city did that. But you can look around and see where the best efforts, and I'm not saying they were malicious efforts, the best efforts did not result in an as-built that worked. And then who is stuck fixing it? Yes, we can try to get the developer. Some of these things, the magnitude of the effects aren't felt immediately. And then who pays that bill? We do. We, the residents of DeBary. And we pay for it with our dollars. And to accommodate that development, we also pay for it with the other things like the heavier traffic. I think the Vice Mayor's comments about the interruptions for the Sunrail, I hadn't even thought about it until about a month ago when they started doing the trial runs. And now, very frequently, it's not a long stop, but it stops us. It stops me going that way, stops me coming home. I can deal with it. If there's a bunch more people behind me, it's going to be a little more frustrating. And that is very real, and that is new. And when we deal with, it can be developed when there's adequate infrastructure. I understand that this does not move us from service level D to a worse level of service. But I can't really identify recent infrastructure additions in that corner of our city that you could hang your hat on and say, see, since that happened, now we've got space for my development. The infrastructure's there, has been there for many years. And its usage levels has gone up and up as there have been more developments. I think that basically is a summary of where I am on this situation. Mr. Costa, I will give you the chance to respond briefly. We're going then to act as a council.
I just want to say a few things. I respect all of your opinions. I hear you loud and clear. And I respect your opinions just like I respect the process that the city has in place. This is the process that has gotten us here today, as I have to submit a plan. I submitted a plan with the lowest density I could do with a modern subdivision, with the curb, the gutter, the stormwater, and still make financial feasibility. That being said, if there are other alternatives, we want to do what's right. We can look at plans that don't impact the wetlands with our neighboring property owners. We can move some things around. I'm happy to do that, but until we get to this point, there was never an opportunity to have a discussion with the community. Now we're here having a discussion. And so what I would like to propose is let us continue to have discussions. Let's keep this application open, and let's come back with a plan with less units, closer to the 1 unit an acre you guys are looking for, which seems to gather support. Now we can look at reducing impervious surfaces by using different materials. We can put those kind of things into our development agreement. We can look at using low impact development techniques, but those aren't all in your code. We have to have a discussion about what your department, what your staff feels comfortable with. And so that takes time. And maybe there's a way to have a workshop where we can all sit down and go over these things. But I propose that instead of starting over, let's continue the discussion with this application.
I have to ask council a question. We have before us an agenda item to either support this ordinance or not support it. And so I think there is a vote on the ordinance. Now, the technicalities of the status of your application, that is not my bailiwick. But what I have here on my agenda, and there's been 2 years to have these kinds of interactions with the community. There was one 7 days ago. There have been times to get a feel for this with the community for 2 years. And we have in front of us an agenda item that calls for council action. And so, City Attorney, what is our obligation with an agenda item that calls for an action, a vote on a proposed ordinance?
Well, you can table. You could take this off the table if you want and give some time for this to germinate. They can withdraw their application. That's another possibility. I suspect there may be a cooling off period, so to speak, if the project were to get, or the ordinance were to get voted down. I'm not sure what the time period is that they could not come back.
City Manager, would you weigh in, please? Because my inclination, we have an agenda item, there's been 2 years of percolation on this, and my inclination is to proceed with our vote.
Mayor, the process, obviously, if you table it, and he will still request what they call a residential low density future land use. One other process, if they wanted to get down to 48 acres, hearing you, the council and everybody talk tonight, is to deny the ordinance, and then they can apply for rezoning. He's entitled, the agricultural umbrella of the future land use, he's entitled to various rezonings under the agricultural, where he can go to A3, which is 1 unit an acre. He's already entitled to that. It'd be very difficult for a council to deny an A3 zoning with the future land use. And then if that's what he wants to do, he knows that he's entitled to that and that he would be able to get an A3 zoning. Then we can work with the premise of 48 acres and how we work the 48 units or 43 units and how we work them around the wetlands is what I hear you. To me, that's the best option is to have him apply for a rezoning under the agricultural future land use, get the zoning down to 1 unit an acre, and then we can work on a plan and all the things that he says to make it work to where there's less impact to the wetlands and it's more really transitionally and compatibility with the area here that sits in the middle of everything that's around there.
Well, my inclination is we have an advertised ordinance and that we would have a vote on the ordinance.
That's correct.
Okay? Is there a motion or is there further discussion of council members? No further? I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to reject the first reading of ordinance 09-2024.
Is that the proper phrasing, City Attorney? What would be better?
Do I need to read the whole thing?
No,
Deny or what?
I would say to deny the application.
It's a vote on an ordinance. What is the motion that would be appropriate if you don't want to vote
No, I
to
think
accept it?
that's clear enough. You're
Okay.
rejecting the
So a vote of yes is to reject it.
vote of yes is to reject it.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Councilmember Stevenson?
Yes.
Councilmember Sell?
Yes.
Councilmember Papalardo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Butlin?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you all. The next, okay, please calm down. We still have a meeting that is going on. The next item is agenda item number 5 is moot because of the vote on item number 4, so there will not be that hearing. And we are moving on to council member reports and communications. Please let us finish the meeting. Councilmember Sell, anything to report?
Just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, letting us know how you feel. I really appreciate it. We usually only have 1 or 2 people here. So it's great to see all you guys. It really is. It's awesome. I don't know where y'all came from actually, but the city's growing and yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Papalardo.
Thanks everyone for being here, of course. I got to attend a ribbon cutting at the Barry Executive Center for Christy Rossi's Mary Kay franchise. Great turnout, great location, and congrats on Councilman Sell's reelection.
Yes. Councilmember Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Also, just to express my appreciation to everybody who's come out to speak and sent emails, phone calls, all that sort of thing. As you may know, I volunteer for TNR. We have an event this weekend for Not Their Fault Feline Foundation. They are doing a poker run, and the first stop is up here at O'Leary's. So whether you bike or drive a car or a truck, 11 o'clock at O'Leary's, you can buy your poker card. I want to say it's $5 or $10, and then there's some other stops, and they're going to end up at the Harley Seminole at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you don't make it to the first stop, you can also join us at the final stop at the Harley Seminole and buy your card there and play poker and support a wonderful nonprofit that takes in and rescues kittens and helps community cats that have medical needs. Thank you. That is Saturday. This Saturday at 11 a.m. at O'Leary's or 2 p.m. at Seminole Harley.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Butlin.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I attended my Team Volusia board meeting, and it was, the guest speaker was from Embry-Riddle. And then the next weekend, we went to Embry-Riddle for their major announcement, the momentum occasion, and they announced that Boeing is coming into Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. That'll be creating 400 jobs, 75 to 80,000 plus. So those people need a place to live, so hopefully they'll choose DeBary. Congratulations to Councilmember Sell and Councilmember
Yes.
Papalardo for their reelection. It's good to have them stay on board. And our next event that we're going to be doing, I believe, July 4th, we'll have a meeting before July 4th, right? Okay, so we'll
Yes,
talk
the
about
3rd.
that then. On the 3rd.
Yes.
So a couple more events coming up we'll talk about later, but thank you everyone for coming out. We appreciate
Yes.
it.
And what
We're not done.
I would like to say, I also attended the ribbon cutting for Christie's new business at DeBary Executive Center. It's very exciting. She has a great group of people excited about their business, and they're right here in DeBary. A lot of them live here as well. And I also want to give my congratulations to Councilmember Sell and Councilmember Papalardo on their reelection. They were unopposed. What I'd like to note to you is, in the last election cycle in 2022, two of us, myself and the vice mayor, were unopposed. Councilmember Stevenson did have one competitor, but she was reelected. And what this says is, it appears that the city's residents feel that we are doing what they want us to do. Not that you don't agree with us on you don't agree with us on everything. That's absolutely true. We will never have that kind of unanimity of vision. But the reelection of the three of us in 2022 and the reelection of the two on the end of the dais here this year means that this body of 5 will serve 6 years as one coherent body of legislators. And I think that the city, expressing their confidence this way, is well served because we can set a vision and we can continually move toward it, because we don't have a change of the players in the middle of the game. And that's not always the case. It's not always desirable. But my heart is warmed by this kind of vote of confidence of our residents that we are on the right path. Whether or not you agree with this decision or that decision, it seems like there is support for the direction that we're going, and for that I am incredibly grateful. City Manager. No, it is the city manager. It is the city manager's time, and then we'll have the city attorney. Then I will wrap it up. But if after I do this, you want to say something in the mic, if the meeting's over, I don't care.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In front of you, if you don't mind, is the annual, what we call the JAG letter. It's the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. It really doesn't affect the city of DeBary. It's a national formula-based grant that the county applies for. And what the county needs is 51% of the cities to approve the county's distribution to nonprofit. On page 3, the county is proposing to distribute the Edwin Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant to SMA Healthcare. And this grant is to improve the criminal justice system, and it's for adult, this is for adult drug court peer recovery specialists for $121,000, and then the house next door, and it's a Success-Fi design program. Typically the mayor signs this, but she needs consensus from the council to provide DeBary's support that the county should distribute these funds to these two organizations.
Is there consensus that you would allow me to sign it?
Yes, you can sign it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Anything
Mayor.
else, City Manager?
No, that's it for me.
City Attorney, does the City Attorney have anything to report?
Really quickly, just to say how much I appreciated the cogent comments that were made tonight. It makes my job easy when evidence is brought forth in hearings like this that support the decision of the council, especially Mr. Hughes's expert testimony too. I want to point out and just compliment the community tonight.
Thank you. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.